On the 31st of October 2022, 10 children were found collapsed in a school corridor. In the 8th and 9th grades, they were students of the Agricultural Technical Institute located in the northeastern Colombian town of Hato. Convulsing, short of breath, and leaking thick white drool from their mouths, they were immediately attended to by local doctors. Once conscious, the schoolchildren reported agonizing abdominal pain, with it established that they had vomited so hard that they had collapsed. 5 were so afflicted that they had to be transferred to a regional hospital in Socorro for further treatment. When they were later released, a medical report concluded that all 10 students had suffered food poisoning after sharing a glass of water. And yet, according to the mayor of Hato, there may have been another, otherworldly reason for the school children's sudden sickness. A Ouija board, said to have been played with by the students in the moments leading up to their collapse. It is not ruled out that it was the Ouija board. The mayor, Jose Pablo Tolosa Rondon, is quoted as having said, "They were passed out and in great and violent pain, and that was simply not normal." Disturbingly, the school's headmistress, upon speaking with the leading Colombian newspaper El Tiempo, even revealed how one of the students' fingers began to twist after she reported a headache and breathing problems. What is more, this was not a sole occurrence, for within just a few hours, another set of children from another Colombian school likewise fainted after using a Ouija board. 31 students in total, they were reported to have exhibited symptoms of extreme anxiety in the lead-up to their collapse. In this instance, contaminated food or water was thoroughly ruled out, with medical examinations and laboratory reports not revealing the presence of any toxic substances. And so, this was a health emergency of a different sort, with cases of Ouija boards causing the hospitalization of schoolchildren continuing to rip through the country into the following year, with some claiming that a doorway to evil had been opened by the boards, and that now the demons are loose, it's all but impossible to get rid of them, not just in Colombia, but right across the world. My name is Laura, and you are watching The Paranormal Scholar. Ouija boards are, without question, one of the creepiest aspects of the paranormal. Although also associated with positive experiences, such spiritual tools are overwhelmingly linked to malevolent beings, trickster entities, and even demons. When one considers these boards in the school environment, our imagination can only turn to the darkest of horrors. And so, before we explore this phenomenon in depth, I'd like to request your attention for a brief moment to allow me to discuss another inspirator of weird and wonderful imagery. This video is sponsored by Wonder, an app that transforms words into art using AI technology. Personalized, endlessly creative, and when it wants to be darkly disturbing, Wonder can bring your ideas to life in mere seconds. Indeed, this app is so artistically competent and creepily intuitive that I used it to create many of the images that you've already seen and will continue to see in this video. For a long time, I've been using AI to enhance my videos and express my artistic concepts, and Wonder is phenomenal at this. Enter a prompt with a subject, for example, terrifying demon in a school, choose a style, in my case Polaroid, and watch Wonder work its AI magic. I especially enjoy using it to illustrate concepts that are otherwise impossible to imagine, such as Bigfoot coming through a wormhole. Of course, Wonder can create other sorts of images as well, from hyper-realistic photographs to 15th century oil paintings. You can even use Wonder to generate AI avatars, so if you are looking for a new social media icon, are desperate to bring an idea to life, or are searching for creative inspiration, this app is for you. And with Wonder's premium version, you can really put your creativity to the test, with over 20 styles, faster generations, and unlimited art. There are also no ads, and the subscription lasts a lifetime. Truly wonderful. Which is why Wonder and I have teamed up to offer you a free trial of their lifetime premium version. all you need to do is click my exclusive link in the description. So that's unlimited art, no ads, access to over 20 styles, high-resolution images, and even 50% off your AI avatar. Again, click my special link and try this free of charge. I know you all have plenty of creepy paranormal concepts you are dying to try out. Thank you. Now on with the video. The initial Halloween Ouija board story reached the English-speaking world on the 12th of November 2022. Misreported and detail poor, media coverage was quick to amplify the conclusions put forward by doctors at Socorro's Manuela Beltran Hospital. The children, now 11 in number instead of the original 10, suffered because of food poisoning, with it being suggested by one emergency coordinator that there had been no psychological alteration in the 13 to 17-year-olds. Quite possibly, they had consumed water from the same glass, or they had come from a pool and had been given something to eat, which was, presumably, somehow unsafe. In this way, the story can be easily dismissed, an amusing footnote in a roundup of weird world news. And yet, the events that surround this case, not to mention the details obscured by standard media coverage, arguably pose questions that are not so simply discarded. In addition to details that cannot be explained through food poisoning alone, such as the chilling claim by the school's headmistress Maria Nazareth Martinez that one of the students' fingers began to twist around after falling ill, the Hato School Ouija incident can be said to be strikingly similar to not one but multiple cases in recent months. Indeed, according to Chris DeFlorio, the former New York police officer who, along with his wife Harmony, now operates as a religious demonologist and unaffiliated exorcist, as of May 2023, there have been at least 5 documented cases occurring at multiple schools in the country after the use of Ouija boards by teens. In one example, a strange happening dating to the opening days of November 2022, and again reported on by Colombia's El Tiempo newspaper, a school in the Atlántico township of Gallego saw 31 students collapse and require hospitalization after playing with a Ouija board. They were, so the newspaper reported, affected with strange symptoms, the causes of which have not yet been established. Further coverage provided by Colombia's Blue Radio revealed that a convoy of ambulances, motorcycle taxis, and motorcycles were required to transport the large number of 6 students to the emergency rooms of the San Rafael and the Sabana Larga Hospital. Whilst intoxication from contaminated Halloween sweets was initially suspected, lab reports ordered by the regional health department concluded that the children did not have any kind of toxic substances in their bodies. Not only that, the school's water was confirmed as safe for human consumption, with their school lunch, what would have been a shared meal, yet to have been served to the students. Even so, similar to the Hato case, which unfolded some 480 miles away only a day or so before, the schoolchildren experienced abdominal pains, anxiety, convulsions, and collapse. According to one of the children's grandfathers, Ricardo Perez, the school called him to tell him that his granddaughter was having a seizure. Undoubtedly a serious incident, the regional government was forced to intervene, as panic, particularly regarding the rumoured involvement of a Ouija board, spread through the community. A statement issued by the Secretary of Health, Alma Solano, confirmed that a stressful situation could have generated these symptoms in the minors. Speaking directly with Blue Radio Station, the local Secretary of Government, Alberto Contreras, even went so far as to confirm that after closer dialogue, some children stated that they were playing the Ouija board, and that could have triggered the sensational and scary incident to unfold. The suggestion was that they had either frightened themselves to the point of sickness, or that something which came from the board had caused them to fall ill. As far as can be discerned, the children in this case recovered, with no proper explanation being provided as to the cause of their illness, a conclusion which stands in strong contrast with the equivalent Hato case, in which, outwardly speaking at least, contaminated water was blamed. And so one cannot help but ask the question, How can these two happenings, with their Ouija boards, convulsions and collapses, be so similar and yet have such different conclusions? In short, is there something more going on? This line of inquiry becomes all the more intriguing when one analyses yet another recent incident from Colombia. Dating to Friday the 24th of February 2023, 28 girls from the Galeras Educational Institute lost consciousness inside their school after using a Ouija board. Once again exhibiting signs of extreme anxiety in the moments before collapse, the girls were subsequently hospitalized. And horrifyingly, speaking to the press, one of the mothers suggested that this was far from the first time this had happened. "I work here in the hospital kiosks," she is reported as having said, "and every day I see between 3 and 4 fainted children arrive." Discussing the reasons why this might be happening, she implored her fellow parents to investigate. "Our children always have a good breakfast, and it cannot be said that what is happening is due to lack of food. Our children cannot continue in this situation." And indeed, that February panic grew to such heights that the headmaster of the school, Hugo Torres, was forced to release a statement in which he appealed for calm. Community panic worsened when images and videos of the unconscious girls leaked onto the internet. In one distressing video, a citizen reporter confirmed that some girls had arrived at the hospital screaming horribly. What is more, as public exposure to the incident grew, others came forward claiming that they had either experienced or heard of yet more similar cases. In one example, collective hysteria, as the Ouija board-inspired happening was increasingly described, was said to have been experienced in several other places, including in 3 towns located in the same department of northern Colombia as the February hospitalizations. And when one digs into the archives, one realizes that this is nothing new. Last year, the Ministry of Education for the Colombian city of Cali issued a statement calling on parents to be cautious in regards to their children using Ouija boards after an incident in the eastern part of the city. Again, supernatural affliction seems to have been suspected. Then, several years earlier in 2017, the National Police released a public information film to warn against the emotional and spiritual consequences of playing esoteric games, including Ouija boards. In the video, their representative sensationally stated that such games were known to be dangerous, meaning parents should be alert as to their children's usage. This institutional response seems to have been triggered, at least in part, by a recent incident at yet another school. In August of that year, some 20 students were hospitalized after using a Ouija board. They fainted and, according to one witness by the name of Francisco Suarez, had contorted extremities, presenting characteristics of people who are possessed. There was, so it seemed, no logical explanation for the mass illness, with food and water poisoning along with other toxic substances being ruled out. Indeed, a spiritual cause was so strongly believed that evangelical Christians became involved. As for the school itself, it was forced to close in the chaos. And so, something truly strange seems to have been going on and indeed growing right across Colombia in recent years. Some manner of supernatural epidemic which leaves children ill and, in the worst cases, hospitalized, whose common denominator looks to be the Ouija board. Undoubtedly, for many, all of this will be easy to dismiss as simple superstition, seeping into areas of society it has no place being. Childish silliness pandered to by the police. And yet, what if, rather than be a sign of irrational belief, these cases and how they have been handled and reported on by Colombian authorities are representative of something truer? After all, these sorts of things do happen elsewhere in the world. They are just not reported on in the same way. For example, on the 18th of November 2013, a commanding officer at Camp Lejeune, a prestigious United States Marine Corps training base in North Carolina, was forced to issue a standing order explicitly banning the use of Ouija boards in or on Marine Corps engineer school spaces, buildings, or property, following reports of strange things happening at the base after several Marines played with a Ouija board. This incident, far from being shared in regional or national news, was published via the online military network platform Rallypoint by a then-serving staff sergeant. According to their testimony, the Marines who used the board were so terrified by what happened, they decided to burn it. This, however, only made matters worse, with it claimed that within the next week, all manner of inexplicable things were reported by others at the base. Screams were heard coming from the woods. Objects moved of their own volition. Doors were seen slamming by themselves, and disembodied little girl voices were heard inside barracks. It escalated to such a point that a permanent sitting post was established so as to protect the barracks from intruders, both seen and unseen. In their post, the reporting staff sergeant was able to share an image of the standing order, proving its legitimacy, and how there was genuine concern amongst military command as to the mystery and fear that the Ouija board had created. To have shared this in the news would have been contrary to good discipline, and also the public's expectations of a sane and rational military, and so it was handled internally, the threat of administrative action being taken against the users of the board asserted by the commanding officer. Another US case dates to 1979, and oddly once again close to Halloween. Described in the news at the time as a Ouija riot, the dramatic event centered on the Miami Aerospace Academy, a private military school located in Florida's famous coastal metropolis. On the 25th of October, students are said to have been possessed by spirits, leading them to cry and scream, smash windows, rip doors from hinges, and flee from the building in fear. Several students are even reported to have collapsed, including 3 girls who, in some versions of the story, screamed out that the devil was inside of them. It was, in short, mass demonic possession. The cause, meddling with the occult. Quoting a teacher from the school, the Miami News reported only the very next day that the students had been using a Ouija board in the moments before the chaos erupted. They, so the teacher sensationally stated, felt a spirit take over the board. This spirit, according to some, was demonic. In the Evening Independent's contemporary reportage, a spokesman for the fire department, Dan LeMay, described how a team was dispatched to the school after the department received reports of an unconscious child. Upon arriving, there were screaming high schoolers everywhere, with, so LeMay stated, some of the other children saying that something supernatural had possessed the unconscious boy. A domino effect of frenzied fear, other children were soon lying on the floor in similarly hysterical states, babbling about witches, Bloody Mary, demons, and the devil. According to Rob Morphy, a paranormal investigator and podcast host who was interviewed for the Travel Channel about the case, it was like an infection spreading from one student to the next. Responses are said to have varied from child to child, with some turning on each other in what have been described as violent battles. One teenage boy was later treated for lacerations to his foot after he, in a crazed state, shattered a window. Today, this case is remembered as the Devil's Academy, a name which suits its undeniably diabolical reputation. Those who claim to have attended the school have even come forward. As recently as 2019, Joseph Wolfe, who studied at the school from 1968 to 1976 and then worked there age 19 in 1979, claimed to have seen a boy's head turn like in The Exorcist after he smashed out of a second-floor window and landed on the roof of the school bus. It was chaos, he is quoted as having said. The boy had transformed into pure evil, with red, bloodshot, pupilless eyes and the strength of 10 men. Another alleged former student has confessed that, by October 1979, the entire student body was obsessed with the occult. "I was at the famous seances," they stated on Facebook. Undoubtedly, the original story has been embellished over the years, with the likes of the Travel Channel's references to horrific levitations and Wolf's claims of head-spinning and multi-story defenestrations simply unable to be traced back to contemporary records. And yet, the by now legendary story's essence remains the same. A group of students exhibiting unusual physical and psychological symptoms after using a Ouija board, much the same as the more recent cases from Colombia, North Carolina, and elsewhere across the world. And so, what, if anything, is going on? Those skeptical of the supernatural point to mass hysteria, with Professor Christopher French, well regarded for his work in the field of anomalistic psychology, stating that demonic possession has certain benefits if used strategically. It allows those with little power to indirectly protest about their lot in life and engage in behaviours which, under normal circumstances, would never be tolerated. Succinctly, a temper tantrum of diabolical proportions. Addressing the 1979 Miami case specifically, another professor of clinical psychology, cited in a Medium article on the case, has said that mass possessions often grip marginalized groups. Because the students at the Miami Aerospace Academy were predominantly from Cuban or Latin American backgrounds, they were, at a subconscious level, revolting or protesting against the regime which oppressed them. Perhaps true, but also somewhat of a strange, incomplete, and bigoted explanation, especially when considered within the context of other happenings. After all, whilst it may be so that Cuban children in Miami might, in the 1970s, be protesting against the regime which oppressed them, and thus, for some ridiculous reason, chose feigned demonic possession as a means to express said protestation, the same explanation looks even weaker when applied to the Marines of Camp Lejeune's Courthouse Bay. Were they marginalized and protesting against the regime which oppressed them? It is odd to consider, as, even if true, why choose a Ouija board and other supernatural shenanigans as a means of political and ideological demonstration? Of course, some sensational cases of Ouija boards gone wrong can be written off as non-paranormally induced emotional distress, such as in the case of a teenage girl from rural Peru who, in 2018, found her way onto the internet after someone posted a video of her emotional breakdown. Whilst the footage is labelled as relating to the black magic of a Ouija board, it is clear from watching the video that this is something very different from demonic possession. In this case, blaming the incident on irrational belief and protesting against the regime which oppressed them appears to be very much deserved. After all, what manner of adult would film a young woman in this way, clearly against her wishes? The same, however, cannot necessarily be said about a case that took place 2 years earlier, when a phenomenal 100 possessed Peruvian children were sent to the hospital after reportedly trying to invoke spirits in their haunted school. Indeed, it can be said to be a facile task to put together a long list of similar stories, from the 2006 to 2007 Girls Town School mass Ouija possession in Mexico, to 35 students being hospitalized in Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia in November 2014, to even reports of primary school-aged children in the Dominican Republic exhibiting signs of demonic possession after playing the viral Ouija-esque occult game Charlie Charlie. And so, from political oppression to contaminated water, to too much food to no food at all, we have seen the full roster of explanations in regards to Ouija possession phenomenon. It is interesting that, for all their presented causes, skeptics fail to mention the one simple solution, that the children involved were simply messing around and having fun. Perhaps this is because, given the photos, footage, and testimonies of those who have been involved in such episodes, this looks to be the most unlikely explanation of them all. These happenings are not fun. They are dramatic, traumatic, and physically and psychologically strenuous. Returning to the speculations of demonologist and exorcist Chris DeFlorio, he stresses the significance of the children all manifesting symptoms after using the Ouija board. Whilst it is perhaps difficult for us to admit the influence of something that is objectively marketed as a board game, it would be foolish to disregard it entirely. After all, it is the common denominator in these cases, and it is therefore reasonable to ask why this is so. In this way, DeFlorio offers that it might even be worthwhile attempting to find out what or who the children were trying to invoke. After all, so he states, Ouija boards are not just a typical board game. They are tools created to open up doorways to the other dimensions, and should not be tampered with. Considering this, it is necessary to remark upon proper usage of such spiritual tools, and how, in terms of both traditional universal knowledge and experiential reports, improper usage of Ouija boards is often associated with dire consequences. For example, the renowned paranormal author Colin Wilson has described the experience of Bill Slater, the British director and producer best remembered for serving as the BBC's head of serials in the 1970s. In his book Poltergeist, Wilson writes that even a simple séance can be dangerous if participants are inexperienced. A case example being when Bill Slater made facetious remarks whilst attending one and using a Ouija board. Later that night, so Slater reported, he awoke to the feeling of an invisible entity trying to take over his body. It was, so he alleged, massing itself on my chest, making every effort to take over my mind and body. A 20-minute struggle is said to have followed, during which Slater had to fight to push the invisible attacker away. The link between improper usage of the Ouija board and his nighttime oppression was too great to ignore. And so, in the case of school children suffering physical and psychological symptoms after using Ouija boards, might it be that improper usage, and perhaps even similarly facetious remarks, may be to blame? Certainly, in the Al Tiempo reportage of the recent Colombian cases, references to social media and the children copycatting Ouija board summonings that they had seen online were made. A cursory glance at video sharing platforms from YouTube to TikTok easily reveals a slew of Ouija board videos, most especially those of a what can be said to be reckless variety, in which participants ask undoubtedly unwise open-ended questions such as, "Is there anyone there?" or even directly seek to summon particular, often malevolent entities. Again, this may seem ridiculous to the skeptically minded, but some sort of connection is clearly present. In this context, the musings of author and consciousness theorist Anthony Peake can be said to be especially terrifying. In his book, The Hidden Universe, he explores the concept of non-human intelligences, everything from gods, angels, demons, poltergeists, and UFOs, and how they may fundamentally represent the same or a similar thing. Discussing the similarities between shamanistic traditions found across the world, Peake reveals the shamanic universe consists of 3 levels of non-ordinary reality, generally known as the upper, middle, and lower worlds. Shamanism, wherever you find it on Earth, considers the middle world to be very dangerous. According to Peake, it is not subject to human morality. As such, the beings that reside there, which he refers to as non-human intelligences or egregorials, may be, at best, ambivalent to humans. In the worst case, these entities are believed to feed off the life force of living beings. In shamanistic traditions, it is entirely possible to visit this middle world. Indeed, it is considered to be the easiest of the 3 other realities to access, for both shamanic initiates and non-shamans. Considering other supernatural concepts such as thin places and the use of ritual in the creation of portals, might it be that beings from this middle world, aggressive and malevolent towards humans, are looking for a way to access the mirror of their non-ordinary reality? Our world, the material dimension in which you and I exist, and quite possibly use Ouija boards in. Thus, is it possible that such occult boards, most especially when improperly used, are capable of summoning harmful entities, and that such is occurring on a global scale, particularly in schools and by children, as a consequence of irresponsible online activity? Such a question provides much food for thought, and is in large degree why I, in my own personal research videos in which I show the use of spirit boards, explicitly advise against using them yourself. I do believe safe usage is possible, and that interactions with spirits of the dead can be extremely rewarding. Even so, I consider myself an explorer in the wild. There are no rules, and it may very well be dangerous. Not every interaction is straightforward. Some can be very odd indeed, and quite possibly of a trickster nature reminiscent of the middle world egregorials of shamanic tradition, which is why I counsel you to keep away, and would most certainly never recommend a child use such an instrument. But of course, those who desire to will anyway, and so perhaps Colombia's national police were not incorrect to produce a public information campaign regarding Ouija board usage. A better approach, however, may have been to demonstrate proper usage, given that people will most likely continue to use and misuse them anyway, the consequences of which may be world-changing for us all. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and are craving even more creepiness, don't forget to click my link to the Wonder app and unleash your paranormal creativity. You might also like to visit my second channel, Laura Roughton, to watch my new hour-and-a-half documentary film. The reviews have been rave so far, and so I expect you to watch it if you haven't already. Thank you again, and remember, keep your hands off Ouija boards and generate a spooky image instead. Until next time.